Welcome back. In my other brief lectures, I've talked about talking about our photos or discussing our photos as a group. And what does that mean? So what I did was I asked you when you turned in your pictures of feeling safe, I asked you to give it a title and give each picture the meaning embedded in it, why you took it to show your feeling of feeling safe. This is sometimes called show and tell. If you have a group of people together and they're sitting around a table and they all have their photos, you can ask them, show your photo, tell its title, and explain or read what the meaning is for that photo. Why did you bring that photo for this topic? And in our case, it was to feel safe. That is called show and tell in my eyes. We're showing and then we're telling what it means. Once you have all those photos, I asked you to group them. And in a group, you might group them on a table or you might group them on a wall. You can stick them to a wall and move them around like sticky notes. So as a group or on your own, I asked you to review all of the photos and sort them into categories. And I'm not sure how you sorted them. I'd like you to explain that to me. But for me, I usually base it on the meaning embedded. The photos are important, and there might be photos of children and there might be photos of dogs and cats and animals, and there might be photos of nature, but unless we know the meaning of those photos and how they relate to feeling safe, you can't really sort them into categories just based on what is in the photo. So I usually do it based on meaning, and then I name each category and I try to define it. So if you imagine there's a bowl and all these photographs are in a bowl to represent at least one of the many categories you might have found in terms of feeling safe, you wouldn't just name the bowl. You would also define what is in that bowl. What are the pictures in that bowl, because they're not all the same picture. So I talked about photo discussions. So you can do them in groups or you can do it individually. And during photo discussions, you discuss your photos, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You might decide on your next photo assignment. Your photo assignment was to feel safe. What is the meaning of feeling safe? We might look at that and then say, one of the categories that came from defining feeling safe was that people like to be around animals to feel safe. And so we might do a whole photo assignment of how do animals make us feel safe. So that's this idea of theoretical data collection, where you're finding something that sticks out to you, and then you're taking your next step in that next direction, if you're going to go in that direction at all. Possibly we just do this one time, we have one photo session that has to do with feeling safe, and that's it. And we can write a paper, and we can analyze it and write a paper and be done with it. Or you might say, I want to go even farther than that. Feeling safe has all these domains, and I want to look into each of them. And then the idea of reaching that third goal of reaching policy and decision makers, deciding during a photo discussion, what are you going to share with others, and who should be at the table when you share it? Who are you sharing your ideas about feeling safe, and what comes from feeling safe? And so we're going to talk about that more now as we talk about discussing triggers, so discussing photos or other ways that trigger discussion. So when you have photos in Photo Voice, or if you have a bunch of poems or stories or films or things like that, there are questions about reflection that help you reflect and discuss those things. Those are the things that trigger discussion. And here's the trigger. Here are the questions that you're trying to trigger. What's going on here? How can we relate to what's going on? Why do things like this happen? And what can we do about it? So it's going from what am I seeing here to what can I do about it? And there are different ways, different conceptualizations of how you can get people to reflect on photos and other triggers of discussion. So one of them is called ORID, and that is an acronym for objective, reflective, interpretive, and decisional. So ORID and this other journey is a discussion method that guides a group through a progression of questions from initial observations to personal analysis and meaning to action steps. It's meant to serve as a structure for effective communication that provides meaningful dialogue that broadens perspectives and results in clear ideas and conclusions and allows the entire group to participate or allows you to participate with your the one person you might be working with. So let's say that you have a certain photograph that you want to discuss, or even a domain or a category of photographs that you want to discuss further. You might start with your objective question, the ORID. What do you literally see in the photographs, or what do you literally hear in the song? You're just getting at the factual information, very objective. Reflective goes into more of a meaning, and how it impacts you. Reflective is your gut reaction, how you react to it, what surprises you or does not surprise you. Then you might start to interpret the what, the so what. What are you thinking? What do you think this means in this photograph that you're looking at? What is the main point of the picture that you see? If you were to give it a title of your own or a caption, what would it be? What is happening? What are the images standing for, if they stand for anything? And then getting into the more action-oriented question of what do we do about this? What changes are needed? How does this affect what we do in the future? What can be done about this? So not everything has to be a negative thing. In safety, maybe there's a lot of people who feel very safe and there's things showing all these great things. So what can we do to make sure everybody feels safe? How can we use some of this learning that we're learning from our own classmates about feeling safe to make sure everybody feels safe? Journey is just another way of looking at ORID. It's an easier way of thinking about it because it just uses east, south, west, and north, the directions that we use in everyday life to talk about the ideas of these questions. So east is your experience with the photo. What did you see, or what did you hear in the song? South is your soul or your spirit. How did it make you feel? What was an aha moment when you looked at this or heard what it meant? West is weaving insights. What new insights have you gained? What inspires you from looking at this photograph? And then north is now what? How can we use our new knowledge? Where do we go from here? So that's like the decisional do. So that's ORID. And there's a lot out there on the web if you ever want to learn more about it, and I can show you how I've used it in my own research. But then there's something called SHOWed, which I have used more than even ORID. And it's very similar, and it is a questioning that takes the discussion from concrete to personalizing to analysis and problem posing and solving. Okay, so concrete is the literally, what are you seeing in this picture? Okay, happening. What is happening in the picture? What do you see going on in this picture? What is happening? You're starting to sort of analyze it. Our is, how does this relate to our lives? How can we expand what we're hearing from other people to make it similar to our lives? How can we embrace how others are feeling and walk in their shoes? Why does this issue exist? That's the W. E is evaluation or empowerment. How can we become empowered with our new knowledge and understanding based on what we're seeing in this picture or this group of pictures? And D is, what can we do to address these issues? So again, it goes into a very action-oriented way of looking at a picture. The pictures that I've seen across my work often are dealing with cancer, and ending on what can we do about these issues in our lives allows the people who are part of my projects to come up with action-oriented recommendations that others can see. And when it comes from the people who brought the pictures themselves, like the women in North Carolina who are dealing with the breast cancer themselves, when they come up with their own recommendations about what we can do or what they'd like to see done, those are going to be local, organic, and hopefully culturally appropriate. So let's end by going back to the picture I asked you to look at before of the trash can, of the trash bags. Remember, this woman had been through cancer, and then when she needed money, she was collecting cans that paid for her medication. Okay, so if I was to use showed, literally, what are you seeing in this picture? We might ask people, what objects, colors, and things in the picture stand out for you? That's the literally, what are you seeing? If you telephoned a friend, how would you describe what the picture looks like to them? The H, the happening in showed. What is happening in the picture? When you see the cans Miss Grace collected, what do you think is really happening? How do you think Miss Grace felt about collecting cans to pay for her medication? And how do you think she felt about accepting help from her friends? The O, the hour. How does this relate to our lives? How does Miss Grace's experience remind you of situations you or others have had? How have you felt when uncontrollable circumstances put you or someone close to you in a difficult financial bind? Is this a common situation? Could this happen to others? Who? In terms of empowerment, what insights does this offer us about the issues some people or groups face? In terms of why, I skipped my why. What makes it difficult for some people to pay for their health-related expenses? How does this affect our community when some people do not have the resources to pay all their expenses? What is perpetuating this situation? And then we can get to the do. What strategies can we come up with to help ensure that people are able to afford their healthcare costs? How might we advocate for individuals or groups who are faced with difficult financial situations? Now, we went through a lot in my group and the North Carolina study that I did with these women, and the action-oriented responses that came from the women in terms of the do after they went through the C and the happening and the hour and the why and the evaluation and empowerment, and then they got to the do's, actually turned into recommendations that were undertaken in their community. And so it's a very powerful way of just taking some very basic information, like a picture, looking at the meaning, and really going from this literal to a personal, to an analysis, to an action-oriented outcome, just by looking at a picture. So I'm going to stop here, and then we'll continue.